That's for the guys in the closet. Good evening, and welcome to the December 22nd meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My name is Joe Steiner. I am the Vice Chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:40-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding, and any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed on the city's YouTube page. It's also broadcast on Summit's governmental TV channel, which is Comcast 34, and Verizon channel 30. A transcript of this meeting is also being taken using the video and audio. So we need all speakers to utilize one of the microphones in the room. So if you happen to be towards the back, you're going to be asked to come to the podium or one of the table microphones so that we can get an accurate transcription. Please note that the exits are to my right and your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. City has a an assisted listening system to help the hearing impaired. If anyone needs that hearing assistance, please obtain it here at the dais and return it thereafter. Ms. Sulios, would you please call the roll of the members?
Sure. Chairman Spur is excused for the evening. Mr. Steiner?
Here.
Ms. Newell? Here. Mr. Mullen?
Here.
Mr. Millay is also excused this evening. Mr. Loikis?
Here.
Ms. Toad?
Here.
Ms. Sager?
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. Andy Ball, sitting to my right, is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board on matters of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Stephanie Sulios, who you just met earlier, is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with the applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. She does not vote on the applications. Also present are our board professionals, and tonight I want to recognize Chris Dower. Chris is retiring. This, I guess, is your last meeting. Thank you for all your help. It's been interesting and it's been fun, and you made life easy for us when things were a little bit difficult. We are going to swear in an interim engineer for tonight, so I'll let you do that, please.
Let's do it. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Dipty, and the last name is spelled S-H-E-T-H.
Thank you. And just very briefly, can you go through your background and experience?
Okay. Yes, I am a civil engineer licensed in the state of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and I have sat before Summit Board and the Montville Board, and been practicing civil engineers for about 19 years. So that's basically it.
Thank you.
Okay, our board consists of seven regular members and up to 4 alternates. Currently, we have 1 vacancy, but all members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote, and we now have 7 present tonight. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved, but tonight's sole application requires 5 affirmative votes to be approved. Tonight, we'll begin with the applicant's attorney giving us an overview of the application process to date and the variances that are required. We'll then hear from any additional expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain any revisions to the application and why those variances are needed. Board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and their expert witnesses. Once the board members and our professionals have completed their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. That is not the time that you tell us what you think about the case. That will come a little bit later. Before you ask your questions, please clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address, and again, use a microphone. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. After all the witnesses have been heard, members of the audience then have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time you can express your opinion, positive, negative, about the application. Then the public hearing will be closed, and we will enter into executive session where the board members will discuss the case and vote. You'll be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in it. Krista Anderson, who is the city's zoning officer, has asked that we remind all applicants they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and pay particular attention to the conditions contained. The resolution documenting any board decision tonight will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. So at this point, we will move ahead to the one case on our docket tonight, which is STMB Properties, and I believe that their attorney is present, and I think you heard me give you the where we're going to go with this. So
Very good, Mr. Vice Chairman. James Weber and Samantha Alfonso of Alfonso and Weber on behalf of the applicant. This is the continuation of the hearings that began before the board in March, continued in May to July, and it was in the July hearing when the board granted the applicants, Kevin and Kieran Flanagan, the opportunity to revisit their plans with their experts. We have revisited those plans, and they have been presented to the board. Subsequent to that, there was an issue with regard to the fire department. That issue was, the board again allowed us to have the indulgence of carrying the hearing upon notice. We did notify all the neighbors and publish again. And at that point, there was a meeting that was occasioned by Krista Anderson. I cannot omit the help that she has provided in moving this matter ahead. At that meeting, we had Joe Michella, lieutenant of the fire department. We had the representative of Jensen Hughes, a fire suppression expert in connection with the stacked parking from California. Samantha Alfonso was there, the Flanagans were there, and as well as Krista Anderson. Based on that, the fire department has indicated their satisfaction and comfort with the proposal, recognizing that if the board does approve this application, it would include as a condition of approval the fire department's report, which has attached to it the Jensen Hughes letter representing that they are on board should the board approve the application. With regard to the application, up on the screen is another exhibit, Mr. Ball. This has not previously been submitted to the board, and I believe we're at A25.
Are we up to 25 or 22?
22?
And this will be A22.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Those were the meetings.
All right, so we're at 822, and this is a comparison of the prior application, and that is shown on the left, and then the current application bearing the revisions that have been carefully described by the architect, Studio 1200, and by the engineering firm Dynamic, show the reduction in size of the L on the left-hand side. That has reduced the number of units by 6. However, even though there's 6 removed, only 1 of those 6 will be an affordable housing unit. This has reduced the FAR. It was out of 111, it's now down to 99. Building coverage is reduced, lot coverage is reduced, and as a result, the overall scale. One of the benefits is that for the neighbors directly behind the L, instead of having a 32-foot rear yard, they now have almost a 60-foot rear yard at that area. The remainder of the principal of the building is still at the approximate 80 feet setback? 87, and thank you. The Flanagans have spoken with several of their neighbors. I see that Mr. Nelson is here as well. And they had a chance to talk to the neighbors directly behind the L, and they have proven to be satisfied with the adjustment. I have provided a summary of our position for the board. Unless the board has any questions of me, I would rely on that summary so that we can proceed ahead. I must indicate and express on behalf of the Flanagans, they wanted me to say this, they appreciate the board coming out on December 22nd, Thursday night, before the Christmas weekend. So it is appreciated, and that's why I'm going to draw my comments to a close unless there's any questions, so that we can move directly into the experts.
Any questions from the board members?
Was-
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I missed it if you said, was anyone from the Summit Fire Department at the meeting with the?
Lieutenant Michella,
Okay.
and he's the fire code expert for the Summit Fire Department. He's the fire official.
Any other questions? Any questions from professional staff? Okay, let's proceed.
I would ask that Nancy
Oh,
Doherty.
anybody from the public want to ask the attorney a question? Don?
I just want to, I'll come up real quick. I just want to clarify, is Joe Michelle the fire official or the fire inspector? Because I thought the chief was the fire official.
The chief signed the report, but I think it's Lieutenant
Joe's the
Michelle.
representative.
Yeah, so,
He's also the fire official.
he's also the fire
I
official?
would debate that unless it's changed in the last year.
Okay. I would ask that Nancy Doherty be called to the stand to testify. She's previously sworn and remains under oath. Is that acceptable, Mr. Ball? Yes. Thank you. Well, you're going to find Nancy's architect. Ms. Doherty, would you reintroduce yourself to the board?
Sure. Nancy Doherty from the firm of Studio 1200, architect for the project.
And have you, together with Peng Chen, revised the architectural plan as I've indicated?
Yes, we have.
Eliminating that, most of that L?
Yes, we have.
Could you describe it for the board?
Sure. So as was stated, we reduced the size of the L, and we went down from a total of 52 units to 46 units. That's a reduction of 6 units. There were 2 taken out from each floor. The FAR went down from 112.8% down to 99.6%. The building coverage was reduced from 39.7% to 35.8%, with a reduction in gross building area of just under 2,000 square feet at 1,960 square feet. And the lot coverage reduced from 75.2% to 69%. As was mentioned, we had 8 affordable units in the original plan. We now have 7 affordable units. So we're still at 7 units, affordable units. They are still located throughout the building. If folks remember from our original submission, there was a concern about where they're located. They're still interspersed on multiple floors. The total sort of gross square footage of the affordable units is 6,482%, so that represents just under 13% of the total FAR of the project. So if we took
That's not percent,
excuse me?
that's feet, not percent.
Yeah, square feet.
6,482 square feet,
Okay,
which
you
represents
said
12.9% of the
You
FAR.
said percent, and that got me.
I apologize, right. So it was both, but, so that's sort of the summary
Well,
of,
what happens if you reduce the amount, reduce the amount of the percentage of the FAR by the amount that's dedicated to the affordable housing?
right. So when we take out that 12.9 percentage of the FAR, we go down from 99.6% down to 86.7%.
And that still requires a variance from the board, correct?
That is correct.
And the other variance is the building coverage that you cited, but there's no variance associated with the lot coverage.
That's correct.
And then with regard parking, in the basement where you have the stacked parking, how many spaces are being provided there? If I say 96, would that be fair?
That sounds, yes, so there's a total of 96 spaces in the stacked parking. There's a majority of them in these triple stackers, and then there are a total of 6 surface parking spaces.
Can you reduce the number of stackers from the original, from 39 down to 30,
30,
correct?
correct.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Oh, wait, no dog run?
Oh, yes. Yes, thank you. So on the roof, we have removed the dog run in its entirety. So that was of concern before that's gone.
Okay. Questions from the board? Questions from our professionals?
Will the building still permit pets?
I'm sorry.
Will the building still permit pets?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just regarding EV charging, that's occurring currently in the building? EV charging stations?
That is currently occurring in the building.
Okay. Any idea of whether or not you could permit that in at least one of the external surface spaces? We had brought that up in our memo. I'm not sure how the board feels about that, but it's not technically required, but it makes it much more publicly accessible.
On behalf of the Flanagans, the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, I
So
have no
should
questions.
we add that as a condition?
Yeah, so are we looking at one space but somewhere in the exterior?
Is it one space or one unit, because the units handle the 2 spaces?
Yeah, well, I'm trying not to add to the additional bonus that they get from that, but at the same time, what I'm after is that it's a space that's not necessarily publicly accessible space, so it doesn't preclude anyone who's non-EV from parking there. So someone who's non-EV can park there as well, so it doesn't overburden their parking supply in that regard.
Is
That's
that-
all what I'm saying.
I think that makes sense.
I hope it does.
We find it
It's such a
acceptable.
new regulation.
Okay, so that would fit into the regulations and not be a problem. Any other questions, Ed,
No, that's all I have.
Deputy?
Clarification just on the solar field. Do you have, I'm just providing testimony for additional screening around that location. I don't know if that is a question for you or somebody else, but.
There is
Yeah.
screening around that
it.
field,
Okay.
yes. There's I think it's 4 feet high, it's on the roof plan.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions from the board for the architect? None? Okay. Mr. Weber, public? Oh, I thought you left. No, you're back.
Oh, my phone went up. I made a mistake of borrowing my wife's phone. We'll never do this.
Questions?
Mine died.
Where questions, Don?
Don Nelson, 20 Plain Street. Is the barbecue area still on the roof, or has that been removed as well? Still there. Still there. Okay. And there's going to be time frames for when they can be used and all that, as presented at past meetings? Okay, thanks.
The operational guidelines that Mr. Nelson has referred to remain a condition of approval should the board approve the application.
With the exception of the dog run is no longer there. Those have been removed.
That's correct.
Okay. Nothing else has been modified or taken out.
The off-street parking standards, I mean, at the original application, we were talking about 127. There's now 111 parking spaces in total. 86 is required. So you still have the surplus, but because you're losing those units and that space below, obviously you're going to reduce the amount of off-street parking.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Can you briefly describe what's happening with the newfound space? Is that just going to be landscaped, right? That parking field's not going to change? There's nothing else planned for that space, right? It's just going to
We
be
have
an
Josh,
extension?
we have
Okay,
Josh
great.
Worry
That's
coming.
correct.
He's the civil engineer. He'll be able to respond to that question.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything
Is it-
else for the architect?
Is it appropriate to ask you about the circulation plan, or is that the civil engineer?
I think that's the
Josh Worry, please, board member Sager.
Okay. Okay, moving on.
I would ask that Josh Worry be recalled to the stand to give testimony in this matter.
Good
And
evening,
you've already
everybody.
been sworn, so
Yes.
same warnings apply.
Mr. Worry, could you describe for the board the changes that have been presented as part of the amended plans from September 22 from a civil engineering standpoint, paying specific attention to the issues that the board has raised?
Sure. So you can see on the screen, we have two site plans that our office prepared. On the left, as Mr. Weber previously testified, was the previous plan. It was dated September 9th, 2022, and the plan on the right-hand side of the screen is our latest site plan, which is dated April 14th, 2022. So the latest site plan on the right-hand side depicts the revised 46-unit multifamily building, which was a reduction in 6 units, as previously testified, going from 52 units down to 46.
If I can interrupt for a second, perhaps we could just show the current plan so that for the board's, thank you.
Sure. So again, with the reduction in the number of units, we were able to provide a smaller building footprint, which resulted in several updates to the lot coverage, building coverage, as well as a floor area ratio that the architect had just testified to. And due to the revised building footprint, the setbacks have also been updated. So for the rear yard setback at the L in the northwest corner of the plan, you can see that the setback has been increased from 32.7 feet up to 59.1 feet. So we were able to almost double the setback in that corner of the property. I think there was a question what the intent for that area was, and I think it was a comment at the last hearing that it was nice that the plan provided green space. So with this updated plan, the intent is to also keep that as a green space. There is landscaping at the rear property line, but to keep a majority of that area as green space, there's no additional parking, no changes to the surface parking lot. As for access, circulation, and parking, you can see the site layout is essentially the same. There's no changes to the driveway, no changes to the parking area, no changes to the circulation plan. With the revised unit count, 886 parking spaces are required per RSIS, whereas 111 spaces are proposed, so we are well above that requirement. Majority of those parking spaces, at least 96 of them, are located within the underground parking garage and will be essentially totally out of sight from the neighboring properties. We are still maintaining the 15 surface parking spaces, which also includes one ADA space, and as just testified, we will be providing an additional EV charging space. From a stormwater standpoint, the project still complies with the City of Summit and NJDEP stormwater requirements, although the reduction in impervious coverage from the previous plans will also decrease stormwater runoff, which is also a benefit to the revised plan. And lastly, for the record, there are no significant changes to the landscaping or lighting with this latest plan revision, other than shifting around some of the building mounted or surrounding building perimeter plantings due to the revised footprint.
Mr. Worry, have you had an opportunity to review the report of Colliers through Mr. Christopher Dewar, dated October 3rd, 2022?
I have.
And would you be so kind as to indicate whether or not you have any exceptions to that report consisting of 13 pages?
We have no exceptions to the comments provided.
As a result, Mr. Vice Chairman, if the board were to approve the application, the applicant would agree to a condition attaching to the resolution the 13-page report of Colliers.
Thank you.
There's also another Colliers report, and that one is dated October 5th, 2022 with regard to traffic engineering. And that, can you respond to the findings set forth in that report? And then they have several questions and changes that they would ask you to address.
I have a traffic memo dated May 10th, 2022. So there's essentially 3 comments, and I think the first was saying that there's essentially no change in the level of service with the revisions, and there's no exception. And the other comment was noting that the applicant shall provide any updated communications from the county related to this project. So our office is coordinating with the county right now based on the reduction in the number of units, and we will provide the board with an approval as a condition of approval.
And that report also indicated that there was a subsequent traffic study that was done after the schools had opened, and that's in the boldface in the first paragraph. What was the finding of Colliers with regard to that subsequent study?
It essentially says that based on the review, our office takes no exception to the use of the April 2022 traffic counts.
And they also indicated that the study relied on materials that were of conservative nature, and they had no objection to that as well. And they were aware of the studies that were taken after the schools opened.
That is correct.
I have nothing further, Mr. Vice Chairman.
From our professionals?
Oh, yes, a few questions, Mr. Chairman, please. With regard to, and this is more in an effort for refinement, is that since you're moving, or the building mass is shrinking from the rear yard setback area, is there the ability to add additional landscaping to that northeasterly corner? I know you have a infiltration, subsurface infiltration system there. Is there the ability to shift that slightly and add a little bit more landscaping?
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry for this question. I know we didn't raise it in our report, but it just seemed apparent to me as I looked at the plan today.
well, we are providing a nice screen along the property line. I think it was
If
one
I
of,
can, Mr. Worry, we're going to bring up the landscaping plan so that you can refer to that.
Yep. So this is our landscape plan that was the last submitted to the board. As you can see, we're still providing that nice row of evergreens along the property line. I mean, we could make some shifts to the infiltration basin, but again, I think the intent was really to try to provide a nice open grass area for the residents to utilize.
The intent for asking that question for the board is that you can then go to a staggered row in that area. Staggered rows tend to fill in faster. It's where the building is closest to the rear property line. That's why I offer it for consideration. If you have that flexibility, it seems to be a lot.
And I think that if you look at the compass direction, that it's going to be subject to southern exposure, so they're going to get a significant amount of sun.
Okay, I'll leave that then.
Could we maybe refer this to John Linson?
I would offer that.
That the final landscape plan be approved by Mr. Linson?
That's acceptable.
Would that
to the
make
applicant.
sense as a condition?
I just didn't want, in order for
Oh, that's why.
the decision to be made.
So I think,
And also just to make an input, we previously testified, we are putting a brand new board and board fence along the rear property line as well. So that will provide some buffering and screening as well.
Understood. With regard to the fencing, I noted, I just wanted to confirm this, I can't remember where we left off, is on that northerly property line, which is the property line to the left as you're looking in front of the building, the 6-foot fence comes all the way to the front lot line in that area?
No, I believe in our last revision, we
Does it change?
pulled it out of the front yard so that there was no longer a variance required for
There
that.
is no longer, okay,
Correct.
I wanted to confirm that, and it seemed to make sense to me, I offer that to the board just because the corner of that building there may be rather prominent in view, that if you had a 6-foot fence, it doesn't seem to coincide with that corner of the building, but I'll just leave that. There aren't any other changes to the right from the prior plan, correct?
That's correct, no changes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Hi, yes, I have some questions and I wanted to make some statements, but bringing back to the traffic letter from Colliers, our letter is dated October 5th, as Mr. Weber mentioned before, and there are some other comments that were in our traffic letter, so I wanted to just address those, and if you can address them, that'd be great. So there was we wanted to have testimony confirming that the residents will not operate the mechanical lifts. That was one of our statements in there, so just wanted to see if there was any information regarding that.
Yeah, this is all going to be done by the valet. No, residents will not have access to the lifts.
Okay, and then there was also a testimony to be confirmed about emergency vehicles accessing the basement parking area. That was part of our letter.
So, you're talking about fire trucks or just ambulance and things like
Well,
that?
certainly
I
no
say
fire
just-
truck is
but-
going to go into
yeah.
any building.
Yeah.
They're going to stay outside the building if there's a fire. because you cannot lose your apparatus within the confines of a building under fire, if I'm not mistaken. As for the ambulances, they certainly have access put in the front, and that would prove to be the most appropriate way. It may be something that the architect can confirm that the clearance is sufficient. So if we can recall Ms. Doherty to come up and indicate what the floor-to-ceiling clearance is, so that we can be assured that an ambulance can access as needed into the basement.
So entering into the garage, we have in excess of 10 feet. It's approximately 10 feet 1 inch there for clearance for ambulances.
Could that clearance accommodate a tow truck?
Could that clearance accommodate a tow truck? Yes.
Thank you.
Also, just for the record, our office did meet with the fire official at the very beginning of the project. We were able to discuss the fire truck circulation plan as well as the dimensions of the fire truck. So this was all reviewed by the fire official at the very beginning of the project to make sure that they had no issues with the circulation.
Were you part of this last meeting that we?
I was not, no.
Okay.
This was
So-
a separate meeting at the very beginning of the project.
So there was but there's nothing that has changed from the time you heard the original?
Yes, correct, nothing has
now
changed.
that would affect the size of the
From a circulation standpoint, there's been no changes.
anything else?
Just one question. From the last traffic study to this one, how did the trip generation change due to the reduction in units?
We do have a traffic engineer, I think they can talk to that.
Certainly. If I would ask that Mr. Craig Paragoy be recalled to the stand to
I
provide
have a
testimony in response.
Well, we have other questions for this
Yeah.
witness, so let's finish these and go.
So I'd like to refer to Krista Anderson's most recent letter based on the revisions. She states that the applicant should address the proposed circulation plan for the entry court as it appears that a driver would be expected to drive around to the left when entering the site from Morris Avenue, where this traffic movement would seem to be counterintuitive and would potentially be in conflict with a visitor vehicle leaving the site from the surface parking area. Now, I looked at your revised site plan and I see a plan for fire trucks, and I see a plan for garbage trucks, but I don't see a circulation plan just for cars. So could you just walk us through what
Sure.
the circulation plan is just for cars coming and going?
That's correct. So I think Krista was just,
I'm sorry, Mr. Worby, but have we lost the screen? Okay, now bring this up.
would be able
Let's
to
see.
maybe just zoom in on the entry area. So I think Krista was just, I guess, questioning how this would work
Right,
with cars.
so I guess
actually.
I am too.
Yeah, so obviously you can see we have our driveway on the southern side of the site. So the intent is for cars to enter the site and then turn counterclockwise around the circle to the.
So you would go to the far side of the circulation circle? Okay.
So typically, in most drop-off areas, you want your passenger side where you're dropping people off.
Right.
So that was the intent for this, for cars to move counterclockwise. Again, there is a stop bar at that intersection. I don't think there will be any issues with that. And again, the access aisles within the surface parking area are sized accordingly for two-way movements. So cars would be making that left-hand turn, although they'll still have their own half lane width in that area.
Okay.
So I don't believe there would be any conflicts with that.
But cars might be coming up the ramp from the parking garage underneath.
That's correct. There is a stop sign in the
Okay.
stop bar in that area as
And
well.
cars might be coming out of the surface parking lot as well. In order for them, do cars coming out of the surface parking lot, do they need to go through this entry courtyard to leave? Or do they go around the outside of that little circle there?
They can do either, essentially. They can go around the entry court. The entry court was sized accordingly so that you'd have another lane or a car. If somebody was parked right at the entrance, there's enough room for another car to get around that stopped vehicle. Or they can essentially go straight and make the right onto the main driveway.
Just seems to me that if you've got cars coming in and going around the circle, if you have got another car coming and going, trying to make a right on that those two cars are going to kind of,
They may need to wait their turn, a little waiting in that process. But we do have a stop bar there, which would, stop any cars from, potentially conflicting with that maneuver.
So you're saying it's not a one-way circle?
It is a one-way circle. However, there's essentially 2 lanes where somebody can pass a stopped vehicle.
Then they shouldn't be able to go, if they're coming up, they shouldn't be able to go to the left, to the left and out, because they'd be facing oncoming traffic coming in.
definitely not a one-way circle.
What you've explained to me is a two-way circle.
I think we
Two-way
need to
circle.
maybe just change the colors and do a little bit more drawing here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the blue line, that is the only direction through the circle,
That is correct.
right? However, you can have someone coming this way, right, but you're stopped here.
Correct.
Right.
Maybe even do one more color.
Yep,
Do one more color.
yep.
Somebody,
They stop, but they continue around the circle, the opposite direction.
No.
They'd make a right.
they would,
Yeah, have to
They-
either make a right.
just like that, outside.
You can't
Looks
go
like it's
back.
going around the circle, though.
They'd be turning around the circle.
And you'd keep going to exit the
Yeah.
property.
Well, they're going around, half the circle.
They'd be going, I guess, clockwise, whereas
Yes.
these people will be coming
Which now
counterclockwise.
makes it-
Right, which
now
is
makes
two
it a
ways.
two-way circle.
Two-way circle.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
In other words, you can at some point in the circle have cars like this. You can have cars going head to head.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling us. That you can have cars going head to head, and that's a real problem, I think.
Right, and the one that's going around has to make room for the one that's making the right going down to leave.
The only area where there would be cars coming next to each other would be in this area. Here, let's highlight it. In this area right here. And again, that is sized
I
for,
didn't see where you.
I'm
you
sorry.
made
It's
it.
very
Okay.
yellow.
Oh, it's left.
I'm sorry.
Can you zero in on just the circle?
Oh, boy,
Would it
that
be,
didn't help.
would it be
Can we delete
problematic to force every car to egress through the circle? Because I agree with my fellow board members here, this looks like a recipe for some insurance claims.
So this is a three-way stop though, right? Josh?
that's correct.
Aren't valets the only ones who are going to be accessing cars from that top part?
Yes, that'll only be delays. They'll be used to this, so.
Yeah, I've valet parked my car a number of times, and I've never noticed them to be particularly observant of stop signs.
Well, these are also this is also visitor parking, right? So you don't necessarily have everybody here used to things.
This will not just be used by tenants, this will be used by visitors and everybody else.
The surface parking spaces will be used by visitors, that's correct.
You have to make it as intuitive as possible.
Well, I would just say that, just looking at this, I think it could be confusing, but I would say that the Flanagans probably are pretty expert at figuring out how to move cars around. So, maybe we defer to them.
if, that the board retain if the board approves the application, that the board consider retaining jurisdiction over the traffic pattern around the circle, so that as the circumstances of the occupancy occur, they can then make such adjustments as would be appropriate. And that would be subject to the board engineer's review and approval at that point. So if it turns out that, yes, it's better to, perhaps as you come up, change the pattern or eliminate the ability to go around the circle, and they can then judge that with actual facts and circumstances as exist in real time.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion as to what's really best. Personally, I hate circles.
Is there going to be Title 39 on this property?
The question that the vice chair has is whether or not you're going to authorize the local police to enforce traffic laws. Yes. You have to grant it to the local police. The answer will be yes, Mr. Vice Chair.
Then I think you want to include the traffic officer in that discussion with our engineers, because they have all the familiarity with stop signs and now 4-way stops and 3-way stops. And
So the board's retention of jurisdiction, if it approves the application, would be subject not just to the city engineer, the board engineer, but also the Summit Police Department. They've reviewed this, they had no
Right.
objections to this, but certainly to the extent that it can be refined, and the Flanagans appreciate the comment that, yes, they feel comfortable in managing this, is something that will work out.
Okay. As long as we're still on parking and Krista's memo, I saw that she did question handicapped accessibility parking, only one.
That's correct. So I think we testified this at the last hearing, but essentially we're providing one ADA space, which is required for the 15 surface parking spaces. And we're also providing a ADA compliant drop-off area at the front of the site. So that takes care of any of the underground parking. So we looked at both the surface spaces as well as the underground garage and made sure that we're compliant with both
And the
areas.
ADA is by the valet.
That's correct.
Okay. Nobody has to go call somebody from the valet department to come pick up the
Correct.
car.
It's right at the main entrance, so they would just pull up. There's an ADA accessible aisle right next to it. So that would take care of any of the parking in the garage.
Okay. Anything else for this witness? Yes. Both of you, go. Pick one.
Ladies first.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding our Collier's engineering letter, I think it was dated October 3rd, we just request that any of our comments be addressed with a response from your team, from the applicant. And the only outstanding clarification that we would want is the additional testimony required for the glare from the rooftop amenities, which just were not provided in the engineering sheet. So if you can reflect on that.
Sure. Again, no problem with providing a response letter, and any glare from the rooftop amenities, I think that might be better handled by the architect.
No problem.
Chairman,
Yes.
just regarding the dialogue that was had a moment ago regarding the drop-off area, the building itself overlaps that drop-off area, correct? That circle, that portion of the circle?
There is an upper canopy, that's correct.
Right, so there is an upper canopy which will allude to a guest coming to a building that's a drop-off area. Will feel like a hotel entrance and drop-off area. So that kind of helps you with that circulation pattern. It's just something that I had in my mind in case it helps the board think about it.
Okay, any other questions for this witness? Okay, and then we were about to recall somebody.
Yes, Ms. Doherty, we're asking to be recalled to the stand. And if we can go to the roof top plan, please. A9.
Correct.
Yes. So in response to the question about the fixtures on the rooftop, they are all shown on the top of drawing A9. They're all surface-mounted fixtures with cutoff on them. And there's fixtures that are along the planters that are basically at about, 30 inches. And they're all shielded fixtures, so facing sort of straight down at the trellis. And those are all fixture type H. At the trellis, there's fixture type K, which is again downlights, cans that go straight down. And then at the two, we have to have emergency lights that are at the entrances, to the stair entrances, and those are fixture type J. But again, they're shielded fixtures. So there's nothing that's throwing up light. They're all shielded downlight fixtures.
Okay, thank you.
Can you remind us again what the parapet height is for this building?
Sure, the parapet is 42 inches. Right.
So all the lights you just
Or
described are
below that. Yes, thank you.
Any other questions for that witness? Okay, none. And I think you were recalling one other witness.
Craig Paragoy, the traffic engineer. I've forgotten what the question that he was addressing to the Vice Chairman.
I just remember you starting, and I stopped you. And he may remember.
He's going to explain how this project eliminates all traffic in Summit.
It's going to be
Hey,
amazing.
You can make a lot of money with that report.
All the lights will be green when you get to them, no problem.
And all facing out of town, right? Okay.
Exactly. Whichever way you're going, though, that's how it'll work. You were asking the change in the trip generation with the reduced units. It's a -1 trip in the morning peak hour and -3 in the evening. So small change, but not substantial.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the traffic engineer?
I have nothing further of this witness, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Weber?
We also have available the principal planner, Mr. Phillips. I would defer to Mr. Snickes as to whether or not he has any questions of our planner, and I would defer to the Vice Chair and the Board as to whether they want to hear Mr. Snickes' testimony.
We want to hear Mr. Snickes' questions.
I mean,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
I hope you don't mind that, Ed, but we do want to hear your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Phillips provided all the relevant testimony that still is, I'm trying not to speak for him, but I would imagine just to confirm his testimony is still applicable to the nature of the application due to the changes that are proposed. The only other thing I would ask is just to quickly summarize the variances for the board. I know there's been a lot of changes and adjustments. If you just summarize what those are.
Very good, thank you. I would ask that Mr. Paul Phillips be recalled to the stand to give testimony in this matter. And be reminded that he remains under oath.
And just very briefly, because I don't think we officially opened it to the public for the past two engineers. Any questions from the public? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, you're familiar with the changes that have been presented to the board?
I have.
Shown on the plans of September 2022 in architectural and engineering form?
I have. So I just have a couple. I'm not going to, obviously, I spent a lot of time at the last meeting covering all the variants. I just want to sort of make two comments with regard to the FAR variance, the D4 variance. Obviously, we've reduced that from the prior iteration of plans. It was 112.8%. We're now at 99.6%, and the standard in the NB zone is 75%. And just to expand upon earlier testimony, the applicant calculated the amount of FAR that is devoted to the affordable units, and it's, I think, a shade under 13%. I would just add in that regard that this applicant is required to provide the 15% set aside to assist the city in meeting a portion of its fair share obligation, and it's not sort of inconsistent with what typically happens for inclusionary developers. Typically, some kind of density or FAR bonus is employed in order to assist the inclusionary developers in actually providing that affordable set aside. The second point I want to make, again, is in looking at the D4 variance, which is something the board clearly focused on, probably more so than any other variance at the last hearing, is that again, I don't think it can be really looked at just in a vacuum, and I think you have to look at the other NB zone standards that also regulate the intensity of development. I think critically here is that we're now under 70% on the building coverage, on the lot coverage, where up to 90% is permitted. And the minimum building setback, we're now over 60 feet. And as you may recall, believe it or not, the NB zone does not even have a building setback requirement in the district, including the rear yard. So again, I think that looking at these standards, what the applicant can do consistent with zoning and what the applicant has done, which I think is designed to afford maximum protection, specifically to those neighbors behind on Plain Street. So you have an enhanced building setback, you have enhanced green space, you heard about the parking being screened and buried, and I think quite frankly, you have an attractive building with appropriate facade articulation, as well as material treatment, all of which the neighbors will see as well as what the public will see from the public view shed. And again, just lastly on the FAR variance, again, the key case is Randolph Town Center, and that case, the court said that an applicant for a D4 variance does not have to show that a site's particularly suited for more intense development, but rather that the applicant needs to show that the site can overcome any problems associated here with a larger FAR than is permitted. And I do believe the applicant has met that burden for the reasons that I discussed at the prior meeting, as well as the rationale that I'm providing this evening. I think Ed and Jim, you can follow along in terms of the variance relief that, I mean, I can go through what I still have, but
I think I have
if you want to do that, that's fine.
Mr. Vice Chairman, and then
I'm assuming in your summary you'll go through them.
Yeah.
I can do it
Then-
right now, so while we have Mr. Phillips there, he
Go
can
for
then express his opinion with regard to it. We're seeking preliminary and final site plan approval, consolidating the 5 lots into 1 lot. We're asking for the permissibility of the residential use in the first floor in lieu of the commercial use. That's a use variance. The square footage of the proposed building, where 10,000 is the limit, we're asking for now 50,000. With regard to the building coverage, that's been stated, the floor area ratio, the height of the building measured from the lowest to the highest point, and that is because of the change in topography. The appurtenance height, so that there was that reduction in the amount of the appurtenances, the stair towers, where they were a little bit larger, and then they were reduced to 100 square feet. The size of the buffer area at the back, there's 2 standards. One, the NB zone has a very reduced standard for that buffer area. The decision was made to apply the basic buffer area requirement here. The height of the lighting, if you recall, there's a light fixture on the front of the building that's higher than what the NB zone calls for. The roof pitch, there's a certain roof pitch that's required. This has a flat roof, and there's disturbance of steep slopes. So at one point, there's the disturbance of steep slopes. All these have been touched upon in the testimony through the proceedings, but in terms of the recital, I believe that covers all of the variances, technical and substantive.
You agree? I do. Okay. Any questions for this witness? Ed?
I'm sorry, just one last thing. I think you still have the relief requested for the logo. I believe it's the tree logo on the front sign. Is that larger than 30 inches?
No, we were sure to eliminate that.
I thought we eliminated that,
Thank
yeah.
you. I wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
Okay, well, what did we just clear up so we get it on the
If you
record?
remember, there was a sign that's on the front wall.
Right.
That's in front of the building. That sign had a logo that was 51 inches, I think, in height, whereas 30 inches is permitted.
That was
And I was asking the applicant to see.
Yeah, no variance.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from our professionals, either one? No? Board members? Okay, Mr. Weber? back to you.
Nothing further, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Okay, do you have a summary for us?
If there's any comments before, from the interested public, then I would ask to be heard after
Oh.
the interested public.
I actually, you had said your landscape architect was available this evening.
No,
Did I
the
miss that?
landscape plan was put out.
Landscape plan, okay.
We can recall Mr. Worry if you want to look at the landscape plan.
Oh, I was holding one question, I misunderstood, and I think it's a simple question, I hope. Now that there's no dog run on the roof, I'm just wondering if there's any thought about a dog run in the newly opened green space? Or if that's going to be left blank? No, okay.
No, on behalf of the Flanagans, there's no dog run that's
Okay.
proposed in the green space.
Okay.
Or on the site.
Thank you.
So they'll have to use the neighborhood.
Like everyone else.
If they were to, but let's say they were to want to put a dog run in later, would they be required to come back to the board?
I believe that they would.
Okay.
Most likely.
I think there'd be a minor site.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, the dog area that was canceled on the roof, what is that space now being used for? Was it revised to be anything?
There's less roof space up there because of the,
Oh,
Change.
yes, because
Yeah.
of the change in the.
It would be very tiny dogs
Okay.
only.
Oh, very, very small dogs.
have I got that correct,
That
Mr. Weber?
That answers the question.
No, that answers your
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Do I have it correct, Mr. Weber? Am I correct in my assumption, Mr. Weber?
And
That
what's
the fact that we've reduced the roof?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Okay. Any questions for, in case I missed any of them, any questions from the public for any of the witnesses at this point? John's shaking his head. He's, I think, the only member of the public present. Okay, at this point.
Comments.
And we need comments from the public.
Again, Don Nelson, 20 Plain Street.
Don, we're going to swear you in on this.
Were
Oh,
you
okay,
sworn in
sure.
a prior hearing?
Never.
Okay. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It will be.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Sure. Donald Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N, 20 Plain Street here in town. I want to applaud the Flanagans for the work they've done on this lot. One of my concerns, though, is, and not so much with their property, but their property brings us up. I believe when the new business zone was established, this type of development wasn't even thought of. It was more like mom and pop, small stores in that area. Or maybe physical therapy offices, things like that. One of my concerns with the new business zone, and this is probably not the forum to do this, but when you have a 0 lot line in the back, that creates a problem for the neighbors. Now, the previous developer that built the building up a little, couple, 50 feet up, is a little bit closer to the property line than this development is. No consideration for the neighbors, only because he owned the property when he built that building, and then he developed the houses behind that. My concern is, and my neighborhood's pretty much done with the exception of the Marco Polo parking lot. And we know that somewhere down the line, that's probably going to be developed. And my concern is moving forward, and in other neighborhoods in the new business zone, or small business, whatever that zone is called, is we somehow need to change the zoning so that there is no ability to build right up to the lot line. Maybe there is now, I don't know, but after listening to the lawyer here say that there is no setback, I know when I built my house, my garage had to be 25 feet from the property line, 8 feet on one side, 10 feet on the other, blah, blah, blah. The new business zone doesn't appear to have that, all those aspects. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's something we should look into to prevent a future developer from squeezing something into a piece of property that unduly affects the neighbors behind them. Now, this project seems to not do that. They've bent over backwards, so I applaud them. I'm worried about future development. So with your help, how would we go about changing that? Do we go to the council? Is it a master plan thing?
Yeah, governing body decides zoning standards,
Okay.
so they would be the ones to go to.
Good. So that's,
I was going to make a suggestion, because every year the zoning board does an annual report where we do make suggestions for changes to the DRO. And I'm sure that Mr. Steiner will convey your comments to Stephen Spur, the board chairman, who collects these over the course of the year and puts it all together.
Good.
But if you were to write him a note, that would help.
I'll talk to him too.
As a matter of fact, we're going to adopt, potentially, the last year's annual report finally this year.
So-
And we have both made a considerable commitment to make sure that we get the annual report for this year done in the first quarter of next year. So, that's something we certainly will put into the mix to see if it fits.
Good.
But yes, the planning board and/or the council are the two places you
Okay.
need to take.
And my only other question is, and I think I've asked this at a previous meeting, the building that's up the street has an exhaust system for the underground garage. I just want to confirm that there will be no excessive noise coming off the building when that system kicks on, or the ventilation systems for the units themselves. Because you come down to my house and you can actually sit in my master bedroom and you can hear the exhaust system from the building, the promenade, kick on, and we hear it. And, Saturday nights, people are in and out. It's not that all you hear, but
Right.
you hear it. So I just would like some reassurance that that's something that will be addressed if it happens further on down the road.
Certainly,
I
the
believe
board
there was
can-
testimony on that earlier, but I'll ask Mr. Weber to summarize it.
There is a report that has confirmed that the mechanical equipment will be well within the acoustical standards for the city and for the state.
Yeah, good. All right,
That's been admitted as part of the evidence presented to the board.
very good. Thank you very much. And good job.
Okay, are there any other comments from the public that we need to hear? If not, Mr. Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I think that you can see that the Flanagans have gone over and beyond in responding to the board's comments, to the neighbors' comments, to the board's consultants' comments and reports, and I would submit the application to the approval of the board.
Okay, condition list.
It's quite a long one. We've gotten rid of at least one from prior hearings, but I have a number we need to go through. So, first is our usual compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. Second is that there will be no lighting on the roof between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. Third is that valet parking shall be maintained for the site to ensure ADA compliance. There will be a minimum of 2 valets on site during peak hours, 1 valet on site overnight. Fourth is that the applicants will conform with COA regulations, including tenant parking rates to be prorated. We previously had discussed dog run, but obviously that's now no longer a condition. So fifth, scheduling of any event must be scheduled by the resident and notified to the manager, so arrangements can be made. The events would only be permitted if on-site parking is sufficient to allow them, and we had discussed a 10-guest threshold as the triggering point when that would come into play. Sixth, then, applicants shall engage Jensen Hughes Incorporated to design the sprinkler system, which shall be subject to review and approval of the fire chief. Seventh, the applicants will install basement systems with manufacturer's specifications substantially similar to those provided in an engineering study, which shall comply with the state noise requirements. Eighth, there will be no sound amplification on the roof. Ninth, the property will conform with operational guidelines that were submitted to the board. Those guidelines shall not be amended without board approval. 10th, garbage.
If I can, Mr. Ball?
Sure.
Those guidelines were updated as of December 5th, 2022, so I would.
I did
refer
have
to
an
them
old
as of
date
that
there.
date.
Thank you. On to 10th, garbage will be handled by a private hauler. 11th, there will be at least 1 EV, electric vehicle parking space located outside of the garage. 12th, the final landscaping plan will be submitted to the city forester for review and approval. And finally, 13th, the board will maintain jurisdiction over the traffic circulation in the proposed circle to include review by the city engineer and city police department.
Those was also the point with Title 39 being able to be applied to the site so that it would authorize the Summit Police Department to manage any violations of the traffic standards.
You wanted to see that as a condition?
I think that would certainly help with the fire truck, with the fire zones being enforced, et cetera.
Got it. Anything further?
Could you repeat the times for the lighting on the roof? I didn't catch it.
No lighting between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m.
No, I think
No,
the other way around.
10 p.m. and 7
7
Thank you.
My mistake? Thank you.
Yeah.
10 p.m. and 7
A.m.
a.m. Okay, that's, makes
More
more sense.
logical.
That makes more sense. Thank you. All right.
Sorry about the confusion.
Chairman? Yes, sir. Excuse me for interrupting. With regard to the COA units, I would just offer that if they could make sure that they're going to be in compliance with all applicable COA rules, because there are income requirements, things of that nature. I just want to identify that, should the board approve the application.
They have to as a matter of law, but one of our conditions did specifically confirm compliance with those COA regulations, any applicable COA law.
Thank you.
Okay, we got them all?
I hope so.
Okay, 13 of them. Who wants to kick it off? Claire, you look anxious.
I've been so quiet.
Let's
Yeah.
choose that.
You know me. I've been in favor of this application from day one. I'm really very enthusiastic about it. I was not here for the July hearing, but even in transcript, the planner's testimony was compelling as to why there should be, why a first floor business use was not appropriate, that the site can handle this development. And his testimony this evening about all of the ways that the building goes above and beyond what zoning requires in terms of lot coverage, I thought was very strong. I applaud the applicant for the creative way it's dealing with parking. I think that surface parking is about the least efficient use of space there is. So I actually am in favor of the stacked parking. My one hesitation on all of this is I don't believe for a moment anyone is ever going to take a left-hand turn out of that site. And although River Road is a mess where it comes, when it comes to traffic, the traffic coming from Morris Avenue is the least of it. But although there are large number of variances you're asking for, I think you've addressed the concerns as to all of them, and I'm going to support this application.
Whom else?
I'll riff on one of the points you were focusing on, because that's sort of been my struggle with this from the get-go. I like the plan in a vacuum. I think it's actually well thought out. I think the changes are appropriate. But the site itself, I think, is really just not well suited to the number of units being built here. I know we've reduced them, but it's still a major concern for me. The traffic study, I get you're following ITE standards. Just having lived in this town for a number of years, driving by that site regularly when I drop my kids off at school, the numbers just lack credibility for me. So what we're going to see is 46 units of multifamily put at basically the corner of Morris Avenue and River Road with a single point of ingress and egress at that very heavily trafficked intersection. And in my mind, the intensity of the use that would come along with that siting just doesn't work. I wish you guys had an egress point on River Road. That, like, past the Volvo dealership. That would make a huge amount of difference to me, but you don't, and we're here. And I know there's been a big effort to make a good plan here, but it's just too much for this site in my view. So it's going to be hard for me to support it.
On my right.
So I am torn as well. Living in that area, I think I always had an issue with the traffic study because I see it every single day, multiple times, and it's getting worse and worse. And between the pharmaceutical across the street and this, I just think it's hard. I think that's a lot to put in that small space. And I applaud you for doing everything that you could to make it smaller, but I'm still torn, whether I can support it or not.
Okay. Adrian?
I think that this project is going to be a very significant improvement over what is there currently. There are several homes and small businesses that have traffic in and out regularly, and I think that the evolution of your plan from the beginning, the first one that we saw, to what we have now has been a significant improvement, and I think that the improvement from what is there existing to what is posed is going to be an overall improvement. It is going to be, it's a difficult corner. It is now, and it is going to continue to be. This is not going to make it magically better, but I don't see it being that this project is going to make it that much worse. I see this project cleaning that corner up in a very positive way. And I think that you've been very sensitive and generous, frankly, with the surrounding neighborhood and trying to do it as well as you possibly can. So I'm going to support it.
Walter?
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree with you 100% on that. I think you guys have done everything you could to really meet your neighbors, on the same playing field. You've cooperated with the board in every step of the way. I agree, traffic is a huge issue down there, but I feel if there's something that you guys could do to absorb all the traffic in town and just fix that, you would. Obviously, you're trying your best. I think this is you're improving a piece of town that can otherwise not be improved by using the current use that's allowed there. So you're improving that, and hopefully we can get new regulations that improve zoning in that neighborhood that comes out of this. For those reasons, I think the application should pass. You're fixing up a piece of property that's not going to be otherwise used properly using the current regulations. I think people are going to find traffic issues wherever they go in Summit. If your tenants, owners can't figure it out, schedule it appropriately, I think they'll probably figure it out. I think that's what happens once you run into a bump. Kind of just decide, I'm going to schedule and taper my trips. So yeah, I would approve this.
So you said you're going to reschedule your trips, or like if this proves to be an issue, is that what we want to be approving as a board?
I think we're supposed to focus on the use of the property where it currently stands, and I think having empty lots is not ideal with the way we want to have the city be in a few years. So to put something nicer there that's considerate of the neighborhood, that is a good transition between what's currently there in mixed business area and then transitioning into a town. I think this does a lot better vocally, I guess, aesthetically. Yeah, I think people maybe they'll get up earlier, maybe leave a little bit later if they can.
No, but we're also,
Ideal world.
well,
Well,
and we're also reducing 5 driveways with ingress and egress because some of them are businesses with people going in and out throughout the day, and getting it down to 1.
Well, I tell you, I don't think I've ever seen anyone come in and out of that property, except for the PT.
An accountant I share a bunch of clients with used to be there, and I'd try to get, and I'd go in and out. It's been a few years. Yeah. Well, Dave Miller was took over the Wilhelms.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many units of
Scott,
residential
but-
versus commercial are
Okay,
they?
but Scott,
I
you're the only
believe,
one we haven't heard from yet.
I believe the saving grace of this project is the fact that it doesn't have retail. I think the fact that it's purely residential will have a significant impact on the traffic that it will generate versus what's happening at the promenade. I think most of the traffic issues that come from a mixed-use project are from the retail side. I think when you're thinking about people that are living in a space, it's just not the same as people going and shopping and using the retail aspect of a project. So I don't believe that the impact on the traffic will be as significant as we think it will be. And then, for better or worse, neighborhoods can evolve over time. And this project, to me, is the continuation of an evolution in a positive direction that makes it a distinct area, gateway, if you will, to the rest of our city. And I think that's a very positive impact and worth the variances that we should grant for this project. To me, it's less about the percentages of what they're asking for. It's purely contextual in terms of what they're trying to do. And I think, contextually speaking, it's a very elegant solution in terms of how they're trying to site the building, how they're trying to make it work logistically. The architecture is great. It works on enough levels to get past what they're asking for in terms of variances. I think it's going to be a great addition to that area and a great addition to Summit, and that's why I'm going to support the project.
My position is basically that I've seen properties like this in other communities developed in the similar mode of the promenade and extending them and seeing the traffic mess that they create and the problems that happen there. Yet when they put residential on the second and third floors, it doesn't seem to do cause any of the problems in here. We're adding units, helping towards affordable housing. There's a drainage issue that has been addressed and addressed well. The glare, all of the various things that we've asked them to do and to check. We're going to go with cutting-edge technology as far as fire prevention is concerned, and that's all a positive to me. And I believe that this is an application that we should support. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Attorney, Mr. Counsel, Legal Counsel, we have, this one requires a supermajority?
5 votes, yes. for
So
the
it
D
requires,
variances.
okay. So is there any other comments that anybody would like to make before we have a motion and a roll call? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this application.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Vice Chair Steiner?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
No.
Mr. Mullen?
No.
Mr. Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
The application is passed.
Okay. The application's passed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Okay, we still have some business to accomplish, so if you're going to go ahead and depart, we have some resolutions for memorialization. First one being 31 Woodland Avenue.
Okay. So we have 31 Woodland Avenue as a resolution for memorialization. This is ZB-22-2140. Our eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Ms. Newell, Mr. Loiketz, Ms. Sager, and Mr. Gonzalez. Would
Motion
somebody
to-
like?
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Vice Chair Steiner,
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
And Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, the resolution carries.
63 Woodland Avenue.
Okay, can we get a motion?
So moved.
Wait, I'm sorry, who moved it? Loiketz? Okay.
And there are different voters on this, I think.
Same voters?
No.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'll tell you right now. It's Ms. Newell, Mr. Loiketz, Ms. Toth, Ms. Sager, Mr. Gonzalez. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Loiketz. Can I-
Second.
Okay. Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
And Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, this one
Alright.
carries as well.
And now we have a resolution that some of you probably have only seen today, and this is a resolution amending our professional services agreement for legal services with Andy Ball's firm. Turns out that the workload was bigger than we planned on for the year, and it doesn't change the amount of what, what the rates are, but it does we do need to increase the total contract amount, adding an additional $10,000 to what we had in the past. It's something we've had to do before, and it's totally related to workload, and I would encourage the board to move this if possible.
Can we get a motion?
Motion to move through.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Mr. Loiketz?
Yes.
Ms. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
And Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, minutes for approval, December the 5th.
Okay, can I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Okay, and the annual report. You all received the final copy with Steve's appendix to it, as an addendum to it, and the resolution. There any discussion on the annual report?
So this actually is for 2021?
The 2021 report, we're a little bit late. We're gonna, as I said, we both, Steve and I have said first quarter of this year.
We'll do
And
2022.
Stephanie has promised
Yes.
to get us the
I
spreadsheet early
promise.
enough.
Okay.
And any real objections, see Chris, who is home watching the Jet game. Is there any questions or discussion on the annual report? If not, we would accept a motion to approve it and submit it to the appropriate bodies.
So moved.
Second.
We can do that by voice vote.
Oh,
No.
voice vote? No.
Have to do it by
Roll call.
roll?
It's a resolution.
Okay, yes. So Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Mr. Mullen?
Aye.
Mr. Loiketz?
Aye.
Ms. Toth?
Aye.
Ms. Sager?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, great, so moved.
Yes.
And on that note, Wednesday, January the 4th, may I wish all of you a very happy holiday season, and I hope Santa brings you everything you want or a reasonable facsimile thereof.
Thank you, Mr. Vice
Happy
Chairman.
retirement.
Yes.
Congratulations.
No
We
more
have to
long
move to-
drive.
And
What?
We have to give you a hug.
It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome.
I move to end.
We are adjourned.
Second.
Did anyone second? I'm sorry.
I didn't know
One
I
of us.
needed a motion for that.
Yeah.
I thought you
Claire
could
has
just
a
go boom.
Did you do it?
I've never seen, we've never done a motion.
Motion by Chris, a tequila shot.
We just,
Oh, dear.
it's over.
Yeah, it's done.
Here.